Mitchell Stankovic and Associates and the Underground Ideas into Action presents The Underground Chats, authentic conversations with credit union thought leaders. Today's chat, Believing in Small Credit Unions, with Bo McDonald, President and CEO of Your Marketing Company.
Welcome, Bo. I'm so excited to have you here and to have you be part of the Underground Chat. And so tell us a little bit about you and about your marketing company and your focus.
Sure. So I'm going to go way back to 2003. I was a on-air personality, young and didn't know the value of a steady paycheck, and said, hey, I can do this business owner thing and open an agency. And in fact, our first client was a credit union. It was, at that time, Carolina Collegiate Federal Credit Union. Now it's Caro. Started working with them in 2003. And in 2008, they said, hey, what you're doing for us, you could do for other credit unions. They need what you have. Can I introduce you to some of my peers? Like, yeah, sure. And, I was very familiar with credit unions. My father having been on the supervisory committee and board of his credit union when I was growing up, a tiny credit union in upstate New York, kind of followed in his footsteps, putting my money where my mouth is. I serve on the board and actually vice chair now of my credit union. So kind of been in the industry since I was 2-3 years old without even knowing this was going to be my career someday.
That's incredible. We had a marketing firm that we ultimately sold, but our rock stars during our early video days were our children. And I remember my son being like 3 years old, and he had his little savings box, and he walked up the teller line to deposit his savings. And I always have that image in my mind that once it's a family affair, it really becomes something that's lifelong, doesn't it?
It is. And, I guess what really brings my passion to it, my father's story of how the credit union helped him through some financial issues and seeing how they took the time to do something that no one else would. And, knowing that I can put my head on the pillow every night and working for folks like that all over the country certainly is, paychecks are nice, but that feeling you get when you do good work for someone, that's irreplaceable.
Yeah. And the opportunity to work with people that share a mission. So you work quite a bit with smaller credit unions, what we consider our boutique credit unions, and they serve specific field of memberships or within communities. Tell me why you focused in that area.
So to me, it's more about mindset than asset size. It just so happens the majority of our clients are all under about 300 million in assets. But there's qualities for those boutique credit unions that can't be replicated at a larger size. One is the ability to be nimble. You can sit in a board meeting, share some ideas, and quickly move on things. You can try new things. You can fail fast. You can fail cheap as a small credit union. But you also have this ability to focus in on a segment or a group that larger financial institutions, whether it's a bank or credit union, just can't do. I think of WBRT, Federal Credit Union down in Shreveport, Lafayette, Louisiana, Baton Rouge. I'm just naming all the cities in Louisiana. Baton Rouge. And, the reason they started was for racial issues down there. There was a teachers credit union, but then WBRT was for the Black folks who weren't allowed to participate in other financial institutions. And you think of stories like that, and that credit union, it was founded back in the 50s, still here today. It's only 2 million in assets, but they're still focused on that same segment of these are the people that we need to serve because they're not getting served anywhere else. So you think of stories like that, whether it's for racial equality, financial equality. The credit unions we work with are very passionate about their mission, and it varies. It's not always just based on finance. It's not always just based on race. I think of Columbine Federal Credit Union that serves the power sports industry. And, thinking of that as underserved, no one else wants you to use motorcycle loans there. And they found a very good niche of serving people who have a dream of owning a motorcycle. They can't afford a brand new one. So it's been fun to watch some of these credit unions repurpose themselves or refocus back in on why they were founded. and serve people who just can't get that service somewhere else.
That was one of the most exciting parts of my consulting business, was getting to know the board members and their backgrounds, and going from a group that were serving motorcycle enthusiasts to going to NASA scientists. I mean, the range of backgrounds and the connection that credit union people have with their particular field of membership. So we've seen a lot of growth this last year within the industry, which to me signals trust within the credit union movement. As we grow, we're also having the considerations regarding how can our smaller, and I even hesitate using the term small, but because 75% of the industry represents a smaller asset size. So I agree with you that it's not all about the asset size. It's truly about being able to serve. But now you've mentioned a few things there. Technology is going to be an issue. There's a real prevalence right now for consolidation and, frankly, burnout. We've got small credit unions trying to work with just a few number of employees and meet the needs of their members, considering what's taking place. So what are your thoughts about what's taking place uniquely for this group of credit unions?
Oh gosh, I could go on for hours about that. Thinking of the staffing issues right now, it's not just credit unions, it's really retail in general. I was on a call on Friday with one of our credit unions that just can't fill the frontline positions. And one of the things we talked through was, well, this is the way we've always done it. We've always had this number of tellers. We've always done this. How can we rethink that? How can we rethink our service delivery to our members? How do we focus more on technology? How do we need to redo job descriptions? So to us, it's certainly an obstacle, but it's also an opportunity to rethink the way we've always done it. And it's difficult because we have members coming in we need to serve. How do we do that differently and quickly, because we can't find the staff right now? On the burnout side, I always go back to this example of a small credit union here in South Carolina. They were only about 20 million, but they were doing something in their service area that no one else was doing. If you could only afford a $3,000 car and it was a 1995 Chevy Beretta, they would do that loan. Most other credit unions, pretty much every bank, would say, too old, not going to do it, not worth our time. They were really serving the underserved. They had a payday alternative product that was second to none in this country. And the CEO was just tired. She started having some health concerns. And the board always said, when you retire, we're retiring. There was zero succession planning. The only plan was, here's the large credit union coming in with this beautiful buyout package that really benefited the CEO and the board, but didn't benefit the members. And my thought was, this credit union goes away and there's no one else that can serve these people. They're back to the predatory lenders. They're back to the buy here, pay here lots. So succession planning is so important. You get to that burnout stage of I'm done and you don't have a plan. And I truly believe that's why we're losing a lot of our small credit unions right now, is the burnout, retirement, and fear of having that conversation of what happens next.
When you talk about succession planning and you look at the big picture, and you mentioned the fact that there might be a package put together, the unfortunate thing over time is that many of these CEOs have not had the investment in them happen, because I can't tell you, it's countless numbers that have said to me, no, the credit union needed this, or no, the credit union needed that. And so retirement planning wasn't something that they prepared for. So sometimes the idea that there's a package, for me, is relative to how important it's going to be able to live after your 35 years of commitment to the people that you serve. So there's that balance that we have to make. The other side of it is, can we afford compensation-wise to attract people into the industry so that we can have this continuation of that belief system that comes from that person that was so passionate and led it before? So these are all, I think, part of rethinking, as you said, rethinking how we're going to go about serving and still keeping that community, that in-touch relationship.
It comes down to board mentality too. You mentioned compensation. This isn't putting anyone down. It's just the reality that I've seen in the boardroom. You have a teachers credit union where the teachers are used to making 50 to 60,000. They have a CEO that might be making 100,000 if they're lucky. They retire. To attract a new CEO, the talent that you want at your credit union, it's going to cost a whole lot more than the CEO you've had with you for the last 20 or 30 years. So for someone who's used to making 50 to 60,000 to wrap their head around, now we have to pay 150,000. We can't pay that. In reality, to attract the talent that you want, you can't replace your CEO for what you were paying your previous CEO, which is horrible for one take, because a lot of small credit union CEOs are grossly underpaid for all of the tasks that they do and experience they bring to the table. So there's that mindset in the boardroom too of, we're not going to pay that much because that's a lot of money.
Agreed. We actually confront that right away when we're working on succession planning and leadership transitions, because literally the idea of a complex credit union is not something that we talk about as much as we need to. The realities in today's world is the CEOs are balancing trust with the risk assessment, the security, the financial savings of people like us. I mean, it's really a critical part of developing our businesses and developing your dad's business. I mean, it's the whole idea that all of us need a credit union to have that compassion for what our journey is. And when I talk to board members, I try to put them in the place of what's the risk that they've identified here, and let's look at the complexity of the job. It's not just about money going in and money going out. It's about how we manage that transition, and it's becoming much more complex.
And it's frustrating, but understanding that it's not out of malice. The board isn't looking to try to mess anyone over. It's just the way we've always done it. There haven't been those strategic discussions. You have a group of great teachers who are on the board of a credit union, just using that as an example, but they've never run a business. And, now more so than ever, understanding the balance sheet, understanding the numbers, the strategy, the technology, the security concerns, as a board member, doing your due diligence to understand all of that, at least at a high level, and challenging yourself to know that, if you've been on the board for any amount of time, how quickly and rapidly things are changing, and understanding your responsibility as a board member. They're so passionate about their credit union. Sometimes that passion stands in the way of growth and continuing on. And they want that credit union to succeed. They just don't have the folks around them to help challenge them, to push them, to ask the questions, to give them the knowledge they need to be a good steward of that credit union.
100%. Modernizing board governance is, I think, one of the most relevant and important initiatives that the industry has right now, is to go through and drive updating the model. We all learned last year that the model on a strategic level is not going to remain the same, even the virtual engagement. So I agree with you 100%. The other thing that you said that was interesting to me is when you talk about the level of engagement and the importance, when it was kind of mom and pop and let's get together and have a meal, and it's a very important part of my social fabric, my volunteer work. And so I think that we know that, and we know that the legacy of our leaders is love. So we don't want to push that away. It's very difficult to say to a volunteer, hey, it's time to change. So the change has to come from within. You have talked about some of the things that the board members have to be thinking about, and our CEOs thinking about. What are some of the mistakes you think we're making right now?
Oh gosh, fear. Fear is if I were to boil it down to one word, it's fear of change. It's fear of failure. It's fear of each other almost. Instead of collaborating with each other, I think, credit unions in the same market area tend to see each other as competitors way too often. And, I look to credit unions like University Credit Union, Dr. David Tuyo, Visions Credit Union. They're big credit unions and they're growing. Even BECU up in Seattle, they're one of the most collaborative credit unions that I've seen at their asset size. Not wanting to take risk, not wanting to change, not wanting to reach out to your peers and talk about the problems and try to find common solutions that you can come together with. Those are some of the biggest things I see when we're doing strategic planning or marketing work with credit unions, having those those deep conversations, fear, and more fear.
We look at the future and there's a lot of unknowns. And so the question of, do I boldly go into the next phase of a credit union space, or do I hover back and say, let's serve the members that we have? And I think that's a place that we have to re-examine today, not just operationally, because we were all put in that place over the last year. You mentioned succession planning, and I'm interested in that. You talked about the fact that some people are looking at it as from their perspectives, what they know. Then there's others that look at it from their perspective and what they know, and they diminish the talent. In other words, this is not rocket science. I'm a rocket scientist. This is not saving the world, and I save the world every day. So we have to recognize that we have to value the value proposition, if you will, the mission of a credit union, the social purpose of it, and put it at a higher level as well. So when you were talking and thinking about the mistakes we make, I think we undervalue both our volunteers and, frankly, our executives, our team members. We don't put them in the place that they should be and the importance of society. Maybe very much like our educational system, which we need to fix. But that is an observation. I think you hit the nail on the head there.
It was a conversation we just had with our board. This past week, we were talking about volunteer recruitment. And it was so refreshing to hear one of the longtime board members say, we need to stop bringing our friends into the board. And, we're not this closed set group anymore. We have the community that we can serve. We don't really have anyone on our board that understands that piece of it, or can bring that outside perspective in. And I see that on the boards all the time. Your charter has probably changed vastly over many years, but your board is still just representing that original group that you were there to serve. And it can be scary because you've served with this group of people for so many years. You're going to bring someone new in. They're going to challenge you. They're going to ask questions. They might disrupt things. So it's very uncomfortable to have that conversation.
Exactly. And you liken it, frankly, to a family member when somebody brings a new partner to the table and everybody's walking on eggshells and they're trying to figure out what that synergy is going to be, but also a challenge to step up our game. And when you think about those transitions, they have to start to happen because we're dealing with an industry where some of the board members have served for 30, 40, even I have one that recently retired after 50 years of being on the board. And so that shows the heart. They're part of that organization. So transitions are tough. I understand. So when you look at the ideas that we need to put into action, what do you think your credit union market, or what are the things that you would say to your clients that you'd like to have them think about doing?
Gosh, there's so many big struggles right now, especially over the last 12 months. New problems have come up. Task saturation is huge. I think in any organization, but if you look at the CEO of a credit union, they can't focus on strategy so often because they're putting out the daily fires that come to them. They're wearing 3 or 4 different hats. It was very telling. A couple of years ago, I was working with a credit union CEO, and she's grown the credit union greatly over the 20, 30 years that she's been there. But she was still in the weeds on some things. And I said, you're almost $100 million credit union now. You have this vision of being a $250 million credit union by this date. Why are you so in the weeds? You can't focus on the strategy. That's really what's holding you back. And we looked at her job description, and it hadn't changed since she arrived in the late 90s. And this was just 3 or 4 years ago. And her job description still was, look at ACH on a daily basis. She's got 4 people in her accounting department now. And it was just a matter of you haven't reviewed your job description. You've grown the credit union. You haven't looked at the organizational chart. You want to be $250 million here. We've got to act like it. You've got to give up some of these tasks that you don't have to do anymore. You've got an accounting team of 4. You were the accounting team when you started back in the late 90s. It's time to challenge things like that, the job descriptions, the expectations of a CEO. Once we can get that task saturation off of our plate, build that trust with our leadership team and the rest of our staff that, yes, they can get the job done, it's going to free up a lot of time for us as leaders of the credit union to focus on what's next. What does next level look like for us? How do we get there? Who do I need to be collaborating with? What other vendors do we need to go out and talk to? What are some huge gaps we have in our services and products and technology that can help us grow? It's really important for us to get that task saturation off so we can free up that time to focus on really what matters as a CEO. You don't see John Ledger, who used to be the CEO of T-Mobile, you don't see him, in the weeds of these tiny little details. He's saying, here's where we're going as a company. Here's how we're going to get there. Here's who I need to pull into my leadership team to help me do that, and the expertise we need. You go execute. Here's your goal. I'm going to hold you accountable to it as this leadership position. Go.
Well, task saturation, I love that term. That's very cool. It really represents what we feel at times, and the idea of letting go to develop others, I really believe is important. We are working on a leadership transition with the credit union that's about to be $1 billion. And we went back and looked at the job description, and it's very similar to what you said. I mean, we haven't gone back and done some of the fundamental changes, even though, frankly, the job itself has changed. I know that the CEO you were talking about, I'm sure she can describe her job a lot differently than what was represented on that paper. So, excellent point. What other ideas into action would you like to make?
I think finding the obstacles, we get stuck on those and we say we can't because, and I always think back, I always share this quote in strategic planning: can't never did a thing. It was a quote that was on the wall of my art room teacher back in elementary school. And, at 8 years old, those are big words. You don't understand what can't never did a thing means. But now nearing 40 and doing the work I do, I always think of, well, I can't because, or we can't because. And we focus on our lack of resources, our lack of time, our asset size, the competition, technology. I always look to turn those obstacles into opportunity. So you're a $100 million credit union. Maybe you're a $5 million credit union. Okay, you can't do it like Tyatt Visions does it, over $1 billion in assets. You don't have those resources. But how can we do it? And you don't have to be that $1 billion credit union. That's really what makes you different. How do you take that obstacle, like I mentioned with that CEO struggling with staffing issues on the front line? Well, that's the way we've always done it. Maybe it's time to rethink our service delivery method. That's an obstacle we have now. But where's that opportunity for us to use that to be a little bit different, to evolve and reach that next level?
I believe what you just said applies to all organizations at all levels. It doesn't matter asset size, because if we're thinking and we're focused on the tasks at hand, we have a tendency not to be looking at our overall journey, our destination. And I know, billion plus, some of the largest credit unions in the world, as well as other organizations, where literally the micromanagement model is still there. Whether it's at the board with the staff or with the CEO and the staff, however you want to look at it, the energy coming from within the organization so important. And listening, I know that you're very committed to hearing and to listening to what the front line says, listening to what members need. How does that come out in your marketing, your message?
Every credit union is very different. If we just cookie cuttered everything and said, here's your auto loan promotion, it might make a small impact, but really understanding the niche and foundation and vision and nuances of every credit union, that's the one thing that makes a small financial institution competitive. One of my favorite things to do if I'm speaking at a conference with CEOs is to say, write down your mission statement on this piece of paper, crumble it up, throw it in the middle. And I start picking them off the floor and I remove the credit union name and I read it and I say, whose is this? And you see a dozen hands go up. Well, that can't be everyone's mission statement, but it is. We don't think about what makes us different. We don't think about using our smaller size as an opportunity to serve our members differently. If you're a firefighters credit union, you've got the ability to have different service hours. You've got the ability to think differently about what you do and do something for those firefighters and their families that Bank of America can't, that the larger credit unions can't. So using those obstacles, well, we're so niched. How do we just reach firefighters? Be different, serve them well, do things for them that may seem crazy for other financial institutions, but make total sense for yours.
So is that why you like the underground? The idea of being a little different? Tell me what intrigued you about being part of the underground.
I hate to use the term rebel. I guess just someone who likes to challenge the status quo. I'm like a 5-year-old. I always like to ask why. Why do we do this? Why are we doing that? And to me, when we go to conferences, we tend to hear the same speakers. We tend to hear the same ideas from the same people. Every time I've attended the underground, it's the conversations that are a little out there that some people are afraid to have, that some of the national trade organizations might shy away from because, it could be a tough discussion. And they don't want to go there because they're trying to please all of their constituents, which is what they do as a larger organization. But I think where the underground comes in is an opportunity to have those discussions for the progressive credit union leaders who want to be here 20 years from now, who want their credit union to succeed, to be able to go in and say, I may not like what I'm going to hear, but it's a different viewpoint. I could learn something from it. It may change my mind, but if nothing else, I'm going to learn something different from this and challenge the way I'm doing things and be a better leader just because of it.
Woohoo! Thank you for that. I was just sitting here thinking that there's a reason that like people come together, and I believe conversations drive that. And so much of what we've talked about today was me following up with comments that you've made because they're real. You're very authentic in what you're doing as an organization and as a human being. And maybe that's the commonality that we should focus on, is not doing things the same, but really the fact that we all care in the same way. And that'll allow us to be more authentic, more open.
I think just asking the tough questions. I was on a call Friday with a client. My team hates it when I jump on the calls with their clients because they know that I'm gonna rattle something. And it's a fairly new CEO of a credit union. He's dealing with some messes, and I kept hearing, "Well, we can't get the staff to." And I said, "You may fire us when I ask this question, but you're the CEO and you're the VP of lending, and you're telling me you can't get the staff to. So let me turn this question back on you. Why aren't you holding them accountable? That's your job as a leader." It's asking tough questions like that, the real questions, the ones that you don't want to hear, that you probably don't want to answer. And that's a very granular example of it. But that's an example of the type of questions that I think get asked at the underground, the ones that shake us and really make us uncomfortable.
So we talked about issues that are real. We know cannabis is going to be an issue, so we've got to tackle that. BECU through your recommendation, we talked to Debbie about what they're doing with adopting your credit union or mentoring, however you want to phrase it. But the idea, instead of merging and having that be the model, instead really truly being collaborative. We're looking forward to the small boutique credit union underground session later this month, primarily to give us an opportunity to hear those stories, to see what we're going to need to do, because we're really talking about thousands of credit unions that are almost fearful to pick up the telephone right now or to go on Zoom right now and talk to another credit union if it's larger. I was talking to a small credit union, I think 30 million, 40 million CEO, and he was telling me that people think that he wants to merge with everybody. And I said, well, how are you projecting yourself, right? So there's this idea that consolidation is going to help. And in some cases, it makes perfect sense. But back to your point about uniqueness, it's truly about what your model demands.
Yeah, BECU is a great example of that. We talk about, merging being the only option. But, when you look at one of the small credit unions that BECU has kind of adopted, they've put their senior leadership on the board. They've financially committed to getting this credit union back on its feet. And what they did was they found a niche in their community that wasn't being served, that didn't exist 50 years ago. And they repurposed that credit union to serve that new need in the community. And I guarantee, if you're thinking of merging, if you look around your community, there are needs there. There are unmet financial needs that if you were to think very differently, I think of Members Credit Union up in the Northeast that was a teachers credit union. And now they've completely rethought their model and they're serving the Hispanic community. They're all in on that. They're still a credit union. They didn't need to merge, but they found this unique need that didn't exist decades ago when they were founded and kind of repurposed their credit union to serve that need. And I don't think a lot of people think about that. They just think, we need to, just kind of limp along serving who we're serving, or we need to merge. That third option isn't something that's often discussed. Where's the opportunity? What's needed out there that we could go and fill and serve this new niche?
That's absolutely eye-opening for me, because I was thinking about, we also can start credit unions at de novos and get them started. But that journey, the regulatory journey, is very difficult and very time consuming. And then it's hit and miss as you develop it. But what you're saying, as far as repurposing, refocusing on a group that really has the need, the core tenets, if you will, of what we do as a cooperative, that's fabulous. It's a great idea.
If you look at the financial education needs, at the poverty rates, at the unbanked, and a credit union goes away in that community, it's a huge loss. To me, if we were doing our job right, that stuff wouldn't exist. If we were doing what we were founded to do, if we were being nimble, if we were being creative, a lot of those needs wouldn't exist in our community. And it's not perfect. You can't help everyone, but there's a lot of opportunity for us to do that.
And take a little more risk. And that's what we can say to all of our colleagues out there, to take a little bit more risk. Have a certain quantifiable amount that may be at risk, but it may also change a life and make a difference to the extent where that builds that momentum, that referral. So good for you. All right. So if you were to answer this question, the world would be a better place if, what would you say to us?
If we dealt with our fear. If you read our blogs, if you read the content we put out, I'm always focused on fear, because when we work with our credit unions, whether it's marketing, strategic planning, branding, everything comes back to fear. And it's usually just fear of the unknown. We don't deal with that. This new idea comes to us, and the first thing we do is say, that'll never work because it's brand new. That fear instantly hits us. It's something different. And it's easier to just dismiss it instead of explore it. And it really came to light for me a couple of years ago. We brought an improv troupe in to work with some of our clients. And one of the games they do is called That's Right, Bob. and they sit two people down in a chair, and you start with this crazy sentence like, the grass is blue and the sky is green. Totally false. And your first thing is to say, well, that's wrong. But if you embrace it and build on that, and the whole goal is for the two people to go back and forth, how many ideas do we miss because we just shut things down too early because of our fear? I truly think if we did nothing else except deal with our root systems, our fear of failure, our fear of discomfort, the credit union industry would look totally different right now. If we would just deal with our personal issues surrounding fear and conflict.
And get our boards and get the entire governance model to get rid of fear. That'd be a fun exercise now that you've told me about that. I love that. So great idea. All right. Any final thoughts for us both this morning? We so appreciate your time.
You know, the one question I've been asking, I've been challenging our clients to ask, and I mentioned it several times, where's the opportunity? Just keep asking yourself that, over the last 12 months, especially the next 12 months as things continue to change. Instead of, dismissing ideas or, playing the victim card of, well, we could never because we're so, where's the opportunity? Ask yourself that, and the world is going to open up.